You're listening to Straight No Chaser, the only show to quench your talk radio thirst. Some programs dilute the issues. We only serve the hard stuff. Old school, new school. Grab a glass and welcome your hosts, the Chief, MBZ, and Pastor C.
Have some wonderful information about this because you are a millennial and you've done some due diligence and you have some statistics. And so why don't you help us understand what's happening in this day and time?
Absolutely. I actually looked up these statistics today, and what I found out is only 2 in 10 Americans under 30 believe attending church is important or worthwhile, which is actually an all-time low. 59% of millennials raised in a church have dropped out, and 35% of millennials have an anti-church stance, believing the church does more harm than good. So that basically makes millennials the least likely age group of anyone alive right now to attend church.
What was that again?
It makes millennium the least likely age group of anyone to attend church. So
you're saying right now, in this time frame that we're in, millennials, this particular generation,
yes,
are the most least likely to attend church.
Absolutely.
Now, Amber, as a pastor, can you please tell me some of the reasons why the church is losing or have lost a lot of millennials?
Well, I think the first reason I can think of that I hope that you can kind of state your opinion on is this fine line between these big mega churches being inviting to millennials and being gimmicky.
Okay.
A lot of millennials, including myself sometimes, think that, you know, it's great that these bigger churches are trying to attract more and more of us, but at what lengths? Because personally, I like the fact that they're trying to make things more modern and hear us out and basically trying to appeal to us, but it gets over the top. It's almost like a production. And it's very interesting because even though millennials have this disconnect with church, when millennials are interviewed or asked about what they prefer from church, a lot of them like the traditional values of church, but they just don't like it to come across in this gimmicky, false way. And millennials have this thing where we think we know everything. So a lot of the problem lies in the fact that either we want to dissect the Bible in a way where, I don't think the pastor is preaching the way that we think. And, you know, we're forward thinkers or whatever. So there's that issue. But I think the first issue that we should kind of touch on is this whole thing of this thin line between trying to reach out to us and making it a gimmick. So what do you think about that?
I'm glad you asked, because it's difficult for those of us who are clergy. We're trying to create an environment as the Holy Spirit leads us to reach every demographic, every generation. And so I think it's a matter of churches wanting to be relevant. And in today's timing, I just believe that there is no excuse why people should not go to church. You have churches that are traditional. You have churches that are contemporary. And so you have some that have the lights, the cameras, the action, the rap, the spoken word. And all of those things are to minister to people where they are so that people won't feel left out. Okay. I believe that a lot of millennials will not be able to receive something that they don't fully engage in.
Right.
I think that they're already reserved and they've already concluded as to the value of church. And so there is this wall up so that they cannot be reached. But I think that churches are more relevant than they've ever been. The message of Jesus Christ is consistent and it's the same. However, how we are conveying that message is very creative and very innovative and very relevant today, where I don't think that people have an excuse as to why they are not engaged fully. Now, let's deal with this, Chief. I'm sure that a lot of individuals don't go to church today because they say that the church is messy. The pastor is this, the pastor is that. It's a bunch of fakes. It's a bunch of phonies and things of that nature. Have you ever heard that before?
I have.
I have too.
Well, let me ask this question now, and I'm giving this from the perspective of a person that every Sunday you were in church, regardless of what the circumstances were. When I grew up and I was in high school and thought I was grown, my mom moved to you can stay out as long as you want. You can stay out until 10 minutes of 11, but at 11 o'clock, you better be sitting on that back row.
Right.
So that's the perspective that I'm asking this question. So if the millennials are not inspired to come to church or to be a part of the church, is part of that the result of it was not emphasized by their parents or guardians?
I am so glad you said that, because I believe that your introduction to the things of God first comes from the family.
Absolutely.
Your parent, someone in your family, my mom, my dad, and even my grandmother, my aunties or whatever, was my first introduction to the things of God. And if that is not primarily the first thing that we see, usually what we're introduced first has the most influence in our lives. So not to get off track, but I would say, yes, sir. I think that it's not valued in the home anymore. And therefore, because it's not valued or pushed in the home, not all homes, but in some homes, it's not valued anymore. So young people have an option today.
So then does part of I don't want to use the word blame, but the foundation of that attitude, is that the fault of the family?
I just want to jump in really quick because, I definitely agree with the fact that church and heavy religion is not something that is in the common household these days. But also, it's like, for example, when I was younger, I used to go to church every Sunday with my parents and my grandparents. So when I was younger growing up, I was so used to the ladies in church. Hey, how you doing? How's your grades? How's your family? How's your mom? What's going on? I was used to that. But like my dad, I went through a period, especially when I first started college, where I wasn't really going to church and I just kind of lost touch with it. And then when I came back to the church, I kind of had a hard time jumping into it because I felt judged.
Wow.
And so I think that for somebody who doesn't have that upbringing to understand what a church community is, to jump into that can sometimes be overwhelming, because when you're a part of a church, you're a part of a community. And
Yes.
a part of being a community is everybody kind of being in your business, trying to see what's going on. But for somebody who's not used to that, if they're walking into somewhere and they're all up in their business and, trying to give their critique here and there, they can misinterpret that love and that comfort for judgment.
And I really want to add to that, Amber, and that is absolutely true. That is absolutely correct. And I want to say that the church is full of imperfect people. And we are imperfect people that represent a perfect God. And so we have individuals and environments that are very critical and judgmental and self-righteous and things of that nature. And so I want to shift and begin to just share this. I think that when people connect with the true purpose of church, there's certain things that will not bother them. For instance, I don't go necessarily for the people and their opinions of me. I go, number one, because it is a biblical mandate. The book of Hebrews says that we should not forsake the assembling of ourselves together. Number two, I go because I love Jesus. I want to be connected to the Lord. Number three, I go to fellowship with individuals. And I think the purpose for me going should always be a priority and help me to deal with the unjust criticism that comes from individuals who are in need of the same God that you have. So I think that one of the discouragements of our millennials is that there is a lack of understanding as it relates to the purpose of church. And so I think it's very easy to come up with excuses as to why you should not engage in something. At the same time, though, you are not seeing the bigger picture of why you should. Does that make sense at all?
Well, let me ask this question. Now, again, I want to take another perspective.
Yes, sir.
So is it possible that the church has not met the millennials where they are? Because this is a generation where and I'm talking about all of us, we've all been impacted by the instant gratification generation. What I mean by that is, you remember when you used to go on vacation and you had to wait about a week or two so you could get the pictures to send them out to everyone?
Sure.
Now, if you are on the Champs-Élysées, you take a picture and 2 seconds later, everyone knows where you are. You can Facebook it live or Twitter live or all these other things. So in this day and age of instant gratification, is the messaging and the presentation of the Bible missing the mark as it pertains to where we are, the way we receive and send information?
Well, I wouldn't say that we are, because we are living in a technological age, and every local church is not current in their technology. However, there are some churches that are very vibrant and forward in their thinking and their ministry. And then, you know what? I would go along and say that we have no excuse. We have live streaming now. Right. You can see it on your phone. You can text it. Everything that is happening in our technology world, the church has evolved into it, and we are presenting Jesus quickly because of the internet and the computers and things of that nature. So not every church has evolved, but you have some churches that are very relevant and very current. So to answer your question, has the church as a whole embraced the needs to minister to millennials? I would say yes. I think that there is a lot out here today that makes our conveyance of the gospel of Jesus Christ relevant to the point where millennials can be reached on their level of comprehension. My thing is, Chief, are they engaging themselves totally, and do they trust the representation of God enough to be able to give themselves holistically to church?
Well, do you think that the church is willing to discuss the issues in the urban rawness, if you will, that they are occurring? For example, you look at Real Housewives of Anywhere Street, or Big Brothers of Georgia, and all these live shows that we have popping up every 10 minutes, and they just give you a raw look at everything. Every profession, every vocation has a Real Housewives, Real People, or whatever type thing going on. Mm-hmm. And so with the way that they are presenting issues, and we all know the format of the show, you the two of us are disagreeing on something, then we're going to go to a restaurant, then we start a big fight, then we call each other a bunch of curse words, and then we move on to the next issue. And that's the way the